In 79 AD, a Roman named Marcus sat on a public toilet in Pompeii, sharing a butt-cleaning sponge with hundreds of strangers. Scientists found his body 2,000 years later still sitting there, guts crawling with deadly parasites. But this shared poop sponge was just the beginning of Roman hygiene horror. In the year 79 AD, a Roman man named Marcus sat on a public toilet in Pompeii. He was talking with his neighbor about gladiator fights. Both men were using the same sponge to clean themselves. Hours later, Mount Vesuvius exploded. This moment was frozen in time forever. When scientists found his body 2,000 years later, he was still sitting on that toilet. They discovered something scary. His guts were full of parasites. These tiny creatures came from that very sponge he was sharing with others. This shows us how Romans really lived. And trust me, it gets much worse than sharing a poop sponge. We think ancient Rome was amazing. We see their beautiful statues and grand buildings. We read their smart writings. We imagine they were perfect people. But here's what your teacher never told you. Romans had bathroom habits so gross they would be against the law today. These people took over the world, but they brushed their teeth with human pee. They wiped their bottoms with a sponge that hundreds of strangers used before them. I'm going to tell you about the most stomach-turning parts of Roman daily life. By the end, you'll know why Roman dinner parties ended with throwing up. You'll learn why gladiator sweat was an expensive beauty product. You'll find out why even being a Roman emperor couldn't save you from having worms crawling out of your body. You might want to put down that snack. Let's start with everyone's favorite topic, going to the bathroom. Today, using the toilet is private. In Rome, it was a group activity that could kill you. Roman public toilets were amazing buildings and dirty nightmares at the same time. Picture a big room with 20 to 80 stone seats in a square. Each seat had a keyhole-shaped hole. No doors, no stalls, no privacy at all. You'd walk in and see dozens of people doing their business while talking. They discussed politics, sports, and business deals while going to the bathroom together. Romans thought this was totally normal. They even had a saying, "Money doesn't stink." This came from Emperor Vespasian when he defended his tax on public toilets. But here's where it becomes a horror story. Instead of toilet paper, Romans used something called a tersorium. This was a sea sponge on a stick. Sounds almost nice until you realize this wasn't your sponge. It was the sponge, one sponge for everyone. After using it, you'd dip it in a channel of running water if you were lucky, or a bucket of water mixed with vinegar if you weren't. Then you'd put it back for the next person. Let me paint you a picture. It's a busy day at the Circus Maximus. Thousands of people need to use the bathroom. That sponge has been used by hundreds of people. The water is dirty, the sponge is falling apart. But it's all you have. A scientist named Dr. Philippe Charlier studied ancient poop from Roman sites. He found that these sponges spread terrible diseases. They passed along roundworms, whipworms, giardia, dysentery, and typhoid. But tiny creatures weren't your biggest worry. Roman toilets were built over sewer systems where dangerous gas built up. Sometimes this gas would catch fire. Imagine sitting there when suddenly flames shoot up from below. Romans were so scared of this, they painted pictures of Fortuna, the goddess of luck, on toilet walls. Some carried good luck charms just for toilet visits. A historian named Ammianus Marcellinus wrote about several deaths from toilet explosions. One senator was blown off his seat by a gas blast and died from his injuries. Not all Romans suffered the same way. Rich people had private toilets in their homes. These were basically wooden seats over pots that slaves would empty. Emperor Claudius was so worried about toilet murders, which really happened, that he had guards check his private toilet before each use. Poor people used chamber pots and threw the contents out their windows. They would shout, "Gardilou," which means watch out for the water. Walking under windows in Rome was dangerous. Now let's talk about Rome's most valuable liquid. And no, it wasn't wine. Romans were crazy about urine. They had a whole business built around human pee. I'm not kidding. There were urine sellers, urine quality checkers, and even urine experts who could tell you which area made the best pee for different uses. On street corners all over Rome, you'd find large clay pots called dolia curti. These had one job: collecting urine from people walking by. Signs encouraged people to contribute, sometimes with rude jokes. Professional urine collectors called falones would go around collecting these pots. They'd take the urine to processing places where it was aged like fine wine. Fresh urine was worthless. It needed to sit until it turned into ammonia. Not all urine was the same. Portuguese urine cost the most money because people there ate certain herbs that made their urine have better ammonia. A Roman poet named Catullus made fun of a Spaniard named Ignatius for his white teeth. He wrote, "Ignatius has snow-white teeth and smiles constantly. In Spain, what each man pisses, he brushes his teeth and red gums with every morning. So your polished teeth just show you're full of piss." Romans used urine for mouthwash and toothpaste. They'd swish it around their mouths every morning. The ammonia did kill germs and make teeth whiter. But imagine the taste. Clothes were soaked in old urine to remove stains. Slaves would stomp on clothes in tubs of pee like making wine, but much worse. Doctors gave urine as medicine for everything from headaches to cancer. They'd look at its color, smell it, and yes, taste it to figure out what was wrong with people. Animal skins were soaked in urine to make them soft. That expensive leather couch Romans sat on, it was soaked in pee. Mixed with certain plants, urine made blonde hair dye. Roman women who wanted to look Germanic would wash their hair in pee regularly. Being a full-on, a urine processor was one of the worst jobs in Rome. They spent their days working in rotting urine. Their skin turned yellow forever. Their sense of smell was destroyed. Many got serious breathing problems from ammonia. Yet they were important to society. When Emperor Vespasian put a tax on urine collection, people rioted. His son Titus complained about taxing something so disgusting. Vespasian held up a gold coin and said, "Does this smell?" That's where the phrase "money doesn't stink" comes from. But wait, you might say. Romans had fancy bathhouses. Surely those were clean. Oh no, Roman baths were like human soup where diseases were the main ingredient. Let's do some math. The baths of Caracalla could hold 1,600 bathers. The baths of Diocletian held 3,000. How often do you think they changed the water? Try once a week if they felt like it. Dr. Piers Mitchell from Cambridge University studied Roman bath water remains. He found that by the end of each day, the water had dead skin cells from 50 people, poop from accidents, blood from cuts, pus from infections, and lots of body oils and other gross stuff. One Roman writer named Marcus Martial complained, "The bath water is so thick you can't see the bottom of the pool." Romans didn't use soap. Instead, they'd cover themselves in olive oil, exercise to work up a sweat, then scrape everything off with a curved metal tool called a strigil. Where did the scrapings go? Right onto the floor or back into the water? Slaves would sometimes sweep up the gray, greasy mix of oil, sweat, dirt, and dead skin, but only sometimes. Here's the really crazy part. The scrapings from gladiators, their sweat, dirt, and dead skin somehow, were collected and sold as expensive makeup. Rich Roman women believed gladiator essence would make them beautiful. They'd mix it with their face creams, paying lots of money for what was basically athlete's grime in a bottle. Some women even drank it to help them have babies. One merchant's sign survived in Pompeii. Real gladiator scrapings from the Ludus Magnus, guaranteed to have the essence of victory. Roman baths were perfect places for diseases to spread. The warm water, the crowds, and no chlorine made it a germ paradise. Common bath-caused illnesses included eye infections that caused blindness, polio, tuberculosis, skin fungi, intestinal parasites, and sexually transmitted diseases. Yes, people had sex in the baths. One study of Roman skeletons showed that people who lived near bathhouses had way more bone infections and parasites than those who didn't. Even though the baths were dangerous, not going was social suicide. Emperors who didn't bathe in public were considered tyrants. When Hadrian tried to make separate bathing hours for men and women for moral reasons, people almost overthrew him. The philosopher Seneca, who lived above a bathhouse, wrote, "The noise is unbearable, the grunting of men exercising, the slap of massages, the splash of divers, the shouts of sausage sellers, and worst of all, the armpit hair pluckers advertising their services with shrill cry." When Romans got sick from their dirty habits, the cures were often deadlier than the diseases. Roman medicine mixed Greek knowledge, superstition, and pure cruelty. Many doctors were Greek slaves with questionable training. The Romans had a saying, "More people die from doctors than diseases." For headaches, doctors would put live electric rays on your skull. The shock was supposed to reset your brain. Drilling holes in skulls to release evil spirits was common. Surprisingly, some patients lived, as shown by healed bone around the holes. Gladiator blood was given as medicine for epilepsy, fresh and warm straight from the arena. Patients would rush to fallen gladiators and drink directly from their wounds. Crocodile poop mixed with chalk was used as a face mask for clear skin. The poop was brought from Egypt at huge cost. Ground mouse brains mixed with honey was used as toothpaste, because apparently urine wasn't gross enough. Romans loved lead like we love smartphones. It was everywhere and slowly killing them. They used lead for water pipes. The word plumbing comes from the Latin word for lead, plumbum. They used it in cooking pots, wine sweetener called sugar of lead, face makeup, hair dyes, and medicine. The result was widespread lead poisoning, causing inability to have babies, brain damage, violent mood swings, seeing things that weren't there, and death. Some historians think lead poisoning caused the madness of emperors like Caligula and Nero. Their crazy behavior might have been from too much lead. Roman surgery was done without pain medicine beyond some wine or opium if you were lucky. Surgeons' tools looked more like torture devices. Bone saws, skull drills, speculums that could break jaws, burning irons, and hooks for removing arrowheads or eyeballs. About 20% of people survived major surgery. Most patients died from shock, blood loss, or infection. You'd think eating would be safe, right? Wrong. Roman dining was a dangerous mess. First, let's clear something up. Vomitoriums weren't rooms for throwing up. They were hallways in arenas. But Romans did throw up at dinner parties a lot. Wealthy Romans would eat for hours, eating until they were sick, then taking medicines to vomit so they could eat more. Seneca wrote, "They vomit to eat and eat to vomit." Special slaves called vomit collectors stood by with bowls. Missing the bowl was considered bad manners. Every Roman meal had garum, a sauce made from rotted fish guts. Making it was so smelly it was illegal to make within city limits. Here's the recipe. Take fish intestines, blood, and heads, layer with salt in clay pots, leave in the sun for several months, strain the rotten liquid, serve on everything. The smell was beyond description. Pliny the Elder called it that extremely putrid liquid, yet Romans were addicted to it like we are to ketchup. Roman feasts had dormice stuffed with pork and pine nuts, flamingo tongues, peacock brains, camel heels, jellyfish omelets, sow's wombs, and stuffed cow udders. But the ultimate delicacy was silphium, a plant so popular as birth control and seasoning that Romans ate it until it went extinct. The last stalk was given to Emperor Nero, who ate it in one sitting. Emperor Claudius died at a dinner party, possibly poisoned by mushrooms. Emperor Caracalla would serve enemies dishes that looked normal but had slow-acting poisons, then bet on who would die first. The famous dinner of Trimalchio, described by Petronius, had a whole roasted boar that, when carved, released live birds that flew around the room, pooping on guests. This was considered fancy. Despite their engineering marvels, Romans were walking parasite hotels. Dr. Piers Mitchell's groundbreaking study of Roman-era human remains showed that 90% had intestinal parasites. The average Roman had 3 to 4 different types of worms. Parasite loads were higher during the Roman Empire than in the Bronze Age. Their advanced hygiene actually made things worse. Ascaris roundworms could grow up to 14 inches long and lived in your intestines. Females laid 200,000 eggs daily. Sometimes worms would crawl out of people's close noses or mouths during sleep. Tritura's whipworms caused bloody diarrhea, anemia, and rectal prolapse. Romans thought it was caused by bad air. Fish tapeworms from undercooked fish in garum could grow 30 feet long inside you. Romans would starve themselves, then tempt the worm out with milk placed near their mouths. Entamoeba histolytica caused amoebic dysentery and killed more Roman soldiers than combat. Why so many parasites? Romans used human poop to fertilize crops. Parasite eggs survived in infected food. The shared toilet sponges spread parasites person to person. Warm, still bath water was perfect for parasite spread. Fish parasites survived the garum rotting process, and the idea of hand washing didn't exist. Romans might rinse hands in perfumed water at dinner, but that was for smell, not cleanliness. When we talk about the fall of Rome, we mention barbarian invasions, political problems, and economic collapse. But what about the biological war they fought on themselves daily? Recent archaeological evidence suggests disease played a huge role in Rome's decline. The Antonine Plague, possibly smallpox, killed 10% of the population. The plague of Cyprian, possibly Ebola, killed 5,000 people daily in Rome. Malaria was everywhere, weakening the population. Their hygiene practices created perfect conditions for diseases to spread. The very bathhouses and toilets meant to show Roman civilization became disease highways. So the next time you think ancient Rome was amazing, remember they shared butt sponges with hundreds of strangers. They brushed their teeth with aged human urine. They bathed in water thick with human filth. They wore clothes washed in pee. They had worms crawling out of their bodies. They paid high prices for gladiator sweat. The Roman Empire gave us law, engineering, and philosophy. But they also showed us what happens when civilization advances faster than hygiene knowledge. Tonight, when you use your private bathroom with clean toilet paper and soap that isn't made from ash and animal fat, take a moment to appreciate it. You're living better than Caesar himself. What's the most disturbing fact you learned? Think about it, if your stomach can handle it. And if you think this was bad, imagine what other secrets ancient civilizations are hiding. Remember to wash your hands with real soap in private. You've earned it.